Good evening and welcome to tonight's Survivor Speak Out event, our closing event for Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2020. My name is Angela Keene. I'm the Community Outreach and Volunteer Coordinator here at Domestic Violence Services of Lancaster County. It's important for us to tell stories. Our culture is told through stories, passed down through generations. We learn about cultures, we learn about history through artwork, through, as early as the hieroglyphics on the cave walls of early settlements, of early populations who walked the earth. And so for us, telling our stories, listening to our stories is incredibly important. It's part of the healing process, as you will hear tonight from several of the victims who are now survivors. They will tell you that telling their story is part of that healing process. Telling their story is inviting others to tell their stories. Telling their stories is letting others know you are not alone. And some of them will even tell you that they wish that they had heard more stories as they were experiencing the abuse in their relationships, because maybe that would have helped them get out a little sooner or make some decisions differently. Regardless, what you're going to hear tonight are stories about economic abuse and spiritual abuse and sexual abuse and some physical abuse, as well as emotional and verbal abuse. We know that all of that is part of the experience that people have in these unhealthy relationships. And it's important for us to recognize that physical abuse is not the only type of abuse as defined by domestic violence. So we want to encourage you to share your experience tonight with others. If there's one thing that each of us can do to create a community free of domestic violence, is to share our experiences throughout the month of Domestic Violence Awareness Month to help connect a victim to our services at Domestic Violence Services of Lancaster, and to just honor and respect the experiences of the people who you will meet tonight. As we're going through this, if you are someone who needs additional emotional support as you're hearing these stories, please don't hesitate to reach out to us through our 24-hour hotline or the text line. Thank you.
Do you remember the first time you fell in love? Did your stomach do flip-flops? Perhaps you felt weak in the knees? Did you feel this overwhelming excitement to see them again? I felt that way with all three of my abusers. Was it love? I thought so. For my first, I was a teenager beginning the cycle of hormones who was searching for a connection and a place in someone's heart and arms. My friends were dating and I felt left behind. And when he entered my life, I fell hook, line, and sinker. He was suave, made me smile, and my heart skipped a beat when I was around him. But not everybody felt the same way. My parents were leery. They told me that he was not right for me. I refused to believe it. And to be honest, I wanted to prove them wrong and did everything in my power to show them that he was a good guy. But they were right. He wasn't. Because I wanted to believe so badly that he was right for me, I overlooked many red flags, one of which was his possessiveness. He didn't want me to join my parents and brother on our family vacation. He didn't like when I had to travel for band competitions and even tried to hitch a ride on the bus with me, but was kicked off while cursing at me through an open window. He came to my school, dumped the belongings in my purse on the floor, and accused me of cheating with my peers staring at me. We parted ways 2 years later, but I didn't leave that relationship unscathed. 2 more men entered my life, both of which I married. They too were suave and knew exactly what to say to make my knees go weak. There were subtle red flags in those relationships too, but before I knew it, I was in too deep. I'd begun a cycle. I looked outside myself for value and approval. When I received feedback that I had no value, I lost belief in myself. The more I looked to other people for that reassurance, the less I believed in me. For someone in an abusive relationship, that cycle led me to relationships that affirmed I wasn't a priority, that my feelings were not as valuable, that I wasn't worthy of more love and attention. I stopped taking care of myself. I put me and my mental health on the back burner. I stopped pushing for my personal goals and stopped doing the things that bring me joy. When I left behind those abusive relationships and got help from a counselor, I broke more than just a cycle of abuse. I had to find new ways to stay out of old ruts. It was as if a light bulb went off in my head. After years of my family and friends telling me I was worthy of so much more, I finally heard them. I developed new routines and positive cycles like regular counseling sessions, setting goals, and taking risks. I began treating myself as I would a wise friend, listening to my body and my heart. I started to see value in being me. But then I realized I was lonely. So one of those risks was taking a chance on finding love again. I met my husband online before swiping left was a thing, and I'm very proud to say that we just celebrated 19 years of marriage. Who knew that a match online would lead to a healthy marriage? He's my rock, my best friend, and biggest supporter. While writing my memoir, there was one day in particular that was very tough for me. I walked down the stairs and sat on our chaise lounge, staring at my husband. He asked if something was wrong, and I said, "I just wanted to thank you for saving me." He turned to me and said, "I didn't save you. You saved yourself." How did I break the cycle of abuse? By first placing value in myself, then by extending outside myself, sharing my skills, externalizing my joy, and developing a community to support others as they move into their own positive cycles and beliefs. I've come to see it's more than abuse survivors who need help breaking cycles. 2 years ago, I turned 50. At first, all I could see is how old I would be when my birthday arrived. But it's funny, creating those positive cycles for myself, it affects how I see age too. It shows me courage in myself and others and all sorts of great things I used to miss with my head buried in the sand. Now, I couldn't let 50 come at me without putting up a fight. It's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years. To celebrate being 50, being a survivor, heck, being a woman, I decided to become a midlife coach. Actually, I gave myself a title, the Feisty Midlife Coach. Feisty to me means bold, brave, courageous, and confident. To me, it means stepping into who we are, learning to embrace ourselves, breaking free of the abuse of being stagnant, and loving ourselves. One of my favorite quotes is, "If nothing ever changed, there would be no butterflies." If you think about how a butterfly transforms, it's amazing how what starts as a caterpillar becomes a magnificent butterfly. To those of you who haven't found your voice yet, you don't have to be alone. There are resources out there for you. All you need to do is ask. I'd be happy to be your support and help you embrace a positive cycle to revamp your life. You too can transform into that beautiful, bold, and vibrant butterfly.
Basically, I started dating this gentleman, and we dated for about a year, got married. I saw no signs, warning signs of any kind of abuse, not even verbal abuse. He seemed very humble, very kind, and it wasn't until about a month into the marriage that we were at a store, and I remember this distinctly because it was the first time that anything had arisen. And we were at a store with my sister-in-law, and he and I left. She was still inside shopping, and we were in the parking lot. An argument over something that never even happened came up, and he apparently was not happy with my answer. And he was in the back seat. We were waiting for her, and she was going to get in the passenger side, and I was driving. I just remember getting struck in the back of the head so violently that I flung forward against the steering wheel, and I was just stunned, and I didn't know what had just happened. And I remember thinking, did anyone see that? And it was almost like two thoughts came to my head. One, did anyone see that? Because I was kind of in disbelief, and I wanted to see if anyone was there to help me, because I had never experienced that with him before. And two, did anyone see that? Because immediately I wanted to protect him. And I think that's pretty much what happened throughout our whole marriage. I lied for him to protect him. I saw the good in him. I had hope for us. Timelines after that were a blur. There were periods of like honeymoon, I guess, stages that they would call it, or grooming, or whatever you want to say. Like, if he would do something awful or terrible, then there were periods of time that it would go for months and nothing would happen. No verbal abuse, no physical abuse, nothing. And so it kind of was like a way of me recharging myself in our marriage. And I thought, okay, this is it. I have hope. This is what I was looking for. This is what I was praying for. We started going to church a lot more, becoming more integrated with he became a deacon. We were integrated with the fellowship. I became the church treasurer, then he became the minister. So then I felt I had an even bigger duty to fill, to protect him, to keep him a man of God. And more things just kept surfacing. And I was always in the mindset that abuse was always physical, and then there's verbal. I had no idea that there were such things as financial abuse. I knew that about sexual abuse. I didn't think I was in it until I started seeing more and more signs of it. So you don't realize it until you come out of it, how much abuse there really is and how much was really going on. He started opening credit cards in my name without me knowing. He would blow our bank account and I couldn't pay the bills without telling me. He was opening his own bank accounts without me knowing and stashing money away. Then there was the infidelity. That lasted for a really long time. And anyone on the outside looking in would be like, why did she stay? And I ask myself that still to this day. Why did I stay that long? And there is no real reason. A therapist once told me to forgive my younger self. And I hold on to that. I was young. I was hopeful. I was protecting him. I thought things would change. And again, timelines are blurred. I remember instances where he tried to choke me. He pushed me up the stairs. He pushed me down the stairs. His favorite thing to do is smack me in the back of the head. Push me to the ground. Again, and then once I came out of it, I didn't realize about gaslighting. There was a lot of that. He'd flip everything around on me, that I was going crazy, that I needed help, that I needed to be on meds. And I started to believe it, and you get brainwashed. And here's this man of God who has all these titles and carries himself very well. And there's the other side where you think, no one's gonna believe you because he holds these titles. Because he was a minister, because he was a do-gooder, because he was looked up to you. So you think no one's gonna believe you, so you stay quiet. Wasn't until we had our second son that he nothing was ever done that I knew of in front of my first son. It was always at night or behind closed doors, or he'd be at school. Nothing was ever had presented himself. My older son did find out about the infidelity because he heard us arguing about it and he asked me about it. And I wanted to prove to him that marriage is strong and we'd stick together, and I stayed for him too, you know. I didn't know what it would do to him if we were to split up. And then we had our second son, and I was giving him a bath. And it wasn't even really an argument, and there was a lot of tension in the air. And I started to speak, and every time it was my turn to talk, if we were discussing something or arguing something, he'd walk away. He would turn the volume up on the TV. It was as if I meant nothing and my words were just garbage, and I felt like a piece of furniture. Felt like I was just a pet to him. So this particular time, we were talking and things were tense, but no real argument. And he walked away. I was speaking when he walked away, and I'm standing in the doorway of the bathroom. And I said, okay, well, I guess I was done talking. And he didn't like the sarcasm in my voice, and he came charging into the bathroom. Things got heated. He got in my face, and he just kept screaming in my face, "What's your problem? What is wrong with you?" And I said, "I'm just simply trying to talk to you." And he started saying things like, "I can't stand you. You're just stupid." I said, "Can you please get out of my face? Our child is right here watching this." And he would not. And I said, "Please back away, please. Not now in front of our kid. He's watching us." And he said, "I don't care." And he grabbed me by my face and pushed me back into the bathtub. And our son saw the whole thing. That was the last straw. That was it for me, knowing that our son would see it and he didn't care. That was huge. So from that point on, I reached out to a friend. She told me to contact Berks Women in Crisis. They helped me through everything. I had to go and order a PFA. But before all that, I tried to tell him, like, this isn't working, and I want a divorce. I need you to leave. And he said, "Absolutely not. This is my house. I'm not going anywhere." I suggested counseling. He refused. He said, "I'm not gonna sit there and have someone tell me what to do." And I said, "Then I need you to leave. I can't have this lifestyle for our kids." And he kept refusing. He said, "Well, you need to get something on paper in order to get me to leave." And so it was suggested to me to call Berks Women in Crisis, and they helped me through the whole process. And he was ordered a PFA and removed from the home. We've been legally separated ever since. But I want to tell my story to help someone that it's possible to get out of it. If they're making you feel as though you're the one at fault, it's not true. No one deserves any of that. If your kids are seeing any of it, please get out. If you're suffering and hurting, please get out. Any of it, none of it is okay to stay. They're not gonna change. They're not. I tried. It was 16 years. Known him for 18. And unless they really seek help for themselves, I know for my situation, he wasn't going to change, and I had to do something. And even if you think your kids aren't seeing anything, they are, because my oldest then came to me and said he saw more than I knew. And if I had known that, I would have left even then. But it's going to take a lot of strength but you can get out of it. And it's so worth it. I can't tell you the first day that he was out of the house how free I felt. He got so controlling to the point that he set up cameras in the house to watch me. All my whereabouts. He didn't let me go out with friends. He barely let me go anywhere, period. And if I did, I had to take someone with me, one of the kids, both of the kids. I had friends come in from out of state, and he said, "You're not going to see them because I don't know who they are." I had to keep making up lies and excuses. So there's the control too, and that can get really out of hand. And if you want to keep the peace, you go along with it. But anyway, I know I'm forgetting bits and pieces, but for the most part, there's so much help out there. There are so many resources. Reach out to people. If you have even just one friend that you can confide in, reach out to them. You have no idea how much it can change your life. I am so free now. I'm out of that control. So much love to you all.
Thank you for choosing to join us tonight to honor those who have shared their experiences with great courage. We know that listening to their stories can initiate a range of emotion, especially if there is something about their story that personally resonates with your lived experience. Please know that you are not alone. We are here for you and with you. If you or someone you know is involved in an unsafe relationship, please share your experience of this event with them and let them know they are not alone. Please call us 24 hours, 7 days a week at 299-1249 and speak with a trained counselor who can listen or help you assess your situation or connect you to a variety of free and confidential services that we provide. Oh no, I'm sorry. A phone call came in and then I couldn't see my script.
That's okay.
Can we
just
keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. If you are not able to make that phone call, you can text the word SAFE to 61222 to initiate that conversation. Please, always, care for yourself, care for your loved ones, and know that you are not alone.
My name is Patricia Cahill. I'm from Ridgewood, New Jersey, transplant to Lancaster. I don't go by Patricia Cahill, I go by P. Cahill. First time I was ever abused, I was 5. It was by a priest. It was brutal. It happened for many years. I ended up having to have surgery for a mysterious, and then I've never been able to have children. So what happened at that time to me is pretty obvious right now, that either my mother had an abortion arranged for me or I had a miscarriage. So the next time it had happened to me, that was definitely domestic abuse. The next time it happened was a few years later when a nun came into my life and told me that the priest was a very sick man, and then she told me she would help me, and she gave me drugs and took me under her wing and into her bed, which I didn't know was an option. And she was also physically abusive. She was 20 years my senior. She was physically abusive to the point that she actually gave me to another priest on 2 different occasions. And this is not, sadly, this is not an unusual story. This is a lot of what happens in sexual abuse with children. It's trafficking. So I closed up. I didn't let anybody in for years. I was raised in the Catholic religion, and I was going to be a nun, so I was into it. Also, in the Catholic religion, you know, the Almighty Father is the big guy. And my father was not an especially nice guy. And the priest, Father Dan, who got me, was really a bad guy. So the whole father thing and the whole God thing, Jesus Christ thing, just did not mix for me at all, you know. I was going to be a nun. It was going to be my life until a nun became one of my abusers and really messed me up. With that added on to, as early as I can remember, when you go to bed at night, you pray to God, to Father, to the Almighty Father. And I was in it. I got down on my knees. I did the whole thing. There's no connection when you're a kid. You do what you're told to do. After Father, the priest Dan, raped me for a decade, and my father would not help me when things happened. Instead, he was fairly violent himself at times. And then to talk about Jesus Christ being my loving Father, it did not work. So when I found myself in the hands of a pedophile nun, which I'm sure is not a topic that's talked about a lot in domestic violence, I fell hook, line, and sinker. I mean, she was my spiritual director. She had a title, and my spiritual mentor. And she was going to, lead my way into the convent. She led my way into her bed, and she was not only violent, I didn't even know what was going on, and she drugged me. So I was drugged the first time, and ended up going to that for many, many, many years of my life as a way to escape. So for me, spirituality became the nun. She was my connection, and all of her friends, and all the things that we did together, and we were so, And meanwhile, there's a bunch of people, nuns, sleeping in a house when a 15-year-old girl is in a bedroom, with a sign on the door that says my name and Sister Eileen's. I mean, that's so weird. That was my God. How do you sleep with your God and then have your God smack you around? My spirituality was stolen, not just in my childhood with Father, but it was stolen by the things that happened afterward, and nobody intervened then either. I was definitely terribly messed up. It was something that was stolen from me, my sexuality, my spirituality, my faith. I lost my finances, I lost my family. And I did not set myself up. I ended up in a situation where I lived in a house with a guy. I needed a room, and he was 33. I was 65, so 3 years ago, I was sexually assaulted by a guy again, and he got away with it again. The priest got away with it, the nun got away with it, the priest that she gave me to got away with it. I found myself in relationships, and I do say these relationships, those were not relationships, those were sexual abuse. But I found myself in relationships with people, friends, getting very close, and BFF, and my friend forever. And when I started to speak about things like this, they ghosted me. It's happened a lot in my life. So I'm pretty particular now about who I talk to. When I was a kid, and the violence from the priest started, I withdrew and I lost my voice. Also indicative of that is that I was getting A's in school and I went to F's, and nobody ever asked me why. I went from the front row to the last row because they couldn't understand what I was saying, so I was put in the back row with people who might have problems speaking or thinking. And I spent 8 years there. Since 1994, I reported the abuse to the Catholic Church. I think that's the first time I got my voice back. They ignored me, they minimized it, they threw me out. I went back, and I went back again. And the fact is, they've never given me restorative justice, but they didn't know they gave me a voice, because I'm so angry now. This doesn't happen just to me. This isn't just in the Catholic Church. Domestic violence can happen in a Catholic church or in a home. It happened in my home, it happened in my church. It's all over the place. So when they shut me down, something opened up. And I've been following it ever since. I was a child of secrets. My mother was an alcoholic. My father was a rageaholic. There was a lot of money in the house. We looked great from the outside, and we better act great from the outside. Don't hang your dirty laundry outside for the neighbors to see. What goes on in this house stays in this house. It's set up for me, an adult who walked into a lifetime of secrets. And then when the priest raped me, I had no one to go to. I already knew there was no one to go. Besides that he threatened me, with death and hurting my mother, I still don't think I would have gone to anyone. It set me up for a world of secrets, silence, that has affected every relationship I've ever had because I don't trust people. And if that's not a core issue of someone who's been sexually abused, tell me what is. So I don't have specific, I didn't grow up with boundaries. I grew up with walls. And I have fed the walls with alcohol and drugs and other people's problems. Now I'm doing my own. I'm working on my own issues. Because everything is connected to everything. And then anybody that I touch or get to know or become friends with, I'm affecting them. My silence, my secrets, my lack of being present to the moment, because I'm full of fear. I think we all are. I am full of fear. As a sexual abuse survivor, I am full of fear. Fear of going to sleep at night. That relates right back to the childhood. Fear of failure. The weirdest one that I have is fear of success, because I'm succeeding right now in various ways in my life. I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't really want to know because I have fear that I'm going to succeed. If that's not connected to childhood, adverse experiences, we're afraid to be good, we're afraid to be bad, we're afraid to have fears, we're afraid to speak, we're afraid to be silent. My experience. Those are my experiences. I called myself a victim, forever. Mm-hmm. I didn't really recognize the connotation of the word. Semantics, vocabulary is important. I didn't have the vocabulary of abuse. I did not have the vocabulary of abuse, so I could not speak to people and tell them what was happening. The importance of words, do what you want with this. They told me I was a lesbian because I was sexually abused and hit by a nun. They told me I was a lesbian. I didn't know if I was a lesbian or not. That word has a friggin' lot of power. And they called me worse than that. So if you take that word and then you take restorative justice and survivor and victim, I see such a connotation between that. I couldn't say the word lesbian. Well, I couldn't say the word survivor either. What does that mean, survivor? I didn't know. I was a victim. And then as I got more into the scene and speaking and learning from people that know way more than I do, I'm a survivor. Get the hell out of my way if you don't believe it. I'm a survivor. I survived alcohol, I survived drugs, I survived my family leaving me. Oh my God, I could list, wow. I lost my spirituality over this. I got that back. I'm working on everything else. To me, the spirituality is most important. I could not say survivor more than I could say spirituality. Now I'm a survivor, and I can list how many things I've survived. And I don't need to argue it with anybody. I know what I've survived. And before I started to survive, I had all the right books. I had the right crystals. I had the right sayings, the affirmations all over the place, and I had a yoga mat that I never used. But I had all the right stuff, and again, just like not understanding the power that a survivor has against the legal system, We don't understand. I did not understand what was happening. If you are a survivor, domestic violence, sexual violence, whatever kind of violence, childhood. If you call yourself a survivor, this is my belief only. It's our job to speak up, if only to one person, because we can change one person's life. We have that ability. I believe you. Those words are so important. I believe you. If someone had said that to me, my whole life would have taken a different trajectory. I had to prove everything. To a survivor today, and I speak to them every day on the phone, I speak to them at conferences, and I say the same thing. Phone or conference, it's the same message. Talk to some person. Go to some person. Don't tell me there's not one trusted person in your life. If you have to hire them and call them your therapist, then do that. You need to speak this out and then follow, the energy of it. To be silent now equals death. Death of something, spirituality, finances, family, faith, but death. I was walking dead. I don't wish to go back there. I'm never going back there.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am a community volunteer for the Domestic Violence Services. And the program here at DVS is really important to me because I am a survivor of domestic violence. I was raised in a really conservative religious household as a child, and when I was 19 or so, I had basically a crisis of faith, and essentially walked away from everything that I had been raised in and decided to forge my own path. I was incredibly independent and I wanted to do things my own way. Because of the way I was raised, I did not have too much ability to discern between good and bad people. Everybody within the conservative religious community was good and everybody outside that community was bad. So once I left the community, I didn't expect much from anybody. And I basically immediately fell in with a really bad crowd. I started to date somebody when I was 20, and he was not an upstanding citizen at all from the very beginning, but I didn't know any better, so I continued to date him, and we developed a relationship, and that actually ended up being incredibly abusive. He did things like choke me while I was driving, pulled the steering wheel and tried to kill us, pushed me down the stairs, punched me, put my head through a glass window, and that was just the physical stuff. He was also very emotionally abusive, mentally abusive, and proceeded to isolate me from everybody, even his friends, because they all knew what was going on, and he was afraid that if I spoke up, his friends would turn on him and help me out. So through the course of my young 20s, I stayed with him. It was quite a lengthy and complicated relationship, and the abuse never stopped. It was always in the back of my mind. I grew accustomed, and I fell into all of those traps that an abuse victim falls into. I didn't love him enough. It was my fault. I did say the wrong thing. I didn't notice that he was already in a bad mood. I didn't pick him up on time, or I locked the doors and didn't know he forgot his keys. It all ended up being my fault in some way, shape, or form, and I assumed all that responsibility, essentially. I really thought that if I loved him hard enough, I would fix him. But looking back on it now, I know that there's not enough love in the world to fix a troubled person. So when I was 27, I had had enough. Some things happened that made me realize that I needed to get away. And the very first step I took after a particularly abusive incident was actually telling him to leave the house. And by God's grace, he did. And that was the first time in 7 years I had had a moment to think about the life I was living, the choices I was making by staying, and the example I was setting for other people. And from that point, I started to realize I needed to talk to other people. I needed to tell my best friend what was going on. I needed to talk to my mom. And it took a little bit of time to work up the courage to do that, because I had been in that situation for so long that it was almost a matter of pride for me to admit that I had been in this terrible situation. The main turning point for me was actually telling my mom what was going on. And that was really hard for me because I had walked away from the religious upbringing that I had. And, you know, rightfully so, I had a strained relationship with my parents. But I remember calling my mom in the middle of the day and crying and telling her how hard it was. And she was there for me. She drove up. At the time I was not living anywhere near them. And she literally dropped everything and was there for me that night. And the next day, we were packing her car and getting all of my important stuff and essentially moving me out. And even after that, there was the promises that he would change, that he was going to be better, that we just needed to put our family back together and it was going to be okay. And because of the support of my family and my friends at the time, I was able to resist all of those lies that he was telling me. And every day got a little easier. I did feel for quite a while after leaving that I was putting myself back together. I wasn't a whole person. I was completely shattered. And through the support and love of the people around me, I was able to do that. I was given a safe space to do that. And I look back on those 7 years now, and I wish I could tell myself that all I needed to do was talk to people. All I needed to do was reach out to somebody. The way he was treating me and the life I was living was not good. I deserved more, I deserve to be loved wholly. And the one thing that I would want other people to know who may find themselves in that situation is that there are a whole host, I mean hundreds of people who are willing to help you. Complete strangers are willing to help you. And you have no idea how that help will change your life. I am living proof that having one conversation with one person dramatically changed my life, changed the direction I was going, and put me on a better path. It doesn't need to be a family member. It certainly can be somebody at DVS, or really any community outreach program. They're all here for you. So, speak up, say one thing.
Many years ago, my husband and I lived in this little community right along the Hudson River. It was this beautiful little community. It had 3-story townhomes on it with little rooftop patios. It was just fabulous. And it had a clubhouse and a little store where you could buy food, but it was kind of over the top, and we actually called it La La Land because we thought it was so crazy. But in La La Land, I used to take a morning walk every morning, and I loved it because you could walk all along the Hudson River, and I could watch beautiful sunrises or listen to the ice flows in the wintertime. And but to do my walk, I had to walk up and down these alleys and down little streets and around the parking lots because we were squished up right against the river there. And part of my walk took me over a little pedestrian bridge to a parking lot, a large parking lot, where people would park and take a ferry across the Hudson and then get on a commuter train to go into work in New York City. So I'm walking over this little pedestrian bridge this one morning. It was a very dark morning, kind of like now when you get up and it's still dark out, and you get out of work and it's still dark out. But as I'm coming down the path, a car comes slowly down the access road into the parking lot. The car pulls up behind one of the few vehicles there that early in the morning, and a young woman gets out, and she closes the door and she's locking the door. And before she can even turn around, another car comes flying into that parking lot and parks right behind her. The driver's side door pops open and a man gets out, and within 3 strides, he's standing right in front of her. She now has her back up against her car. There's a car in front of her, his car behind her, and he's right in her face. She has no place to go. And it happened so quickly, so fast, I didn't even realize that I had stopped in my tracks. It's one of those things when you know it's not good. You know there's danger, and everything about you goes, what do I do? Should I run away? Should I go in and help? And my usual response is I just freeze. And as I stood there watching this, I could tell right away that he was in control of the situation. He was doing all the talking. And I thought, well, what can I do here? What can I do? There was no one around. It was too early in the morning. Nothing's open. There's nothing there anyways but a dock and a parking lot. And I didn't have my phone on me, so I thought, okay, I could go home and make a call, but I didn't want to leave her there by herself in that parking lot. And I thought, what else could I do? I thought, well, maybe I could say something, right? Like, hey, what's going on? Everybody okay? And I thought, I don't know if he has a weapon. I don't know if the situation would have been worse if I said something. So I decided the only thing I could do was to be there, to keep walking, and to hopefully let her know, and him know, that I was there, that I was witnessing what was going on. And so I started slowly walking. And I was going to walk around the perimeter of this parking lot like I did every morning. So I went straight ahead, and that took me right behind his back. Now, they weren't close enough that I could hear every word he was saying, but I could tell by the tone of his voice, by the hands, gesticulating, and his shoulders up around his ears. And she's just standing perfectly still, staring straight ahead, basically right into his chest. So I walked behind them, and I hoped for sure at that time, willing her to see me so that she would know she was not alone, that there was somebody there with her. And I kept walking, and as I made the first turn, that was where I hoped that he would see me, through his peripheral vision. I thought if he sees me, he'll step back. He'll go, oh, someone's here. I better not say anything or keep this behavior up. But he didn't. He kept on going. He either didn't see me or just didn't care. As I started making that third turn, coming back towards them, I suddenly saw him thrust his hand in front of her. And she hesitated, and then she dropped her keys into the palm of his hand, and he closed his fingers around her and took a fist and said a few more words to her, and then strode away to his car just like he'd come in, slammed the door and drove out of there fast and furious. I think she and I both let out a deep breath at that moment. She seemed to kind of collect herself and turn and started walking towards the dock. And that's when our paths were going to finally cross. And as we got close, we were a few feet from one another, and she looked into my eyes. She looked up and looked into my eyes, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you okay?" And she took a moment, very brief. She said, "I'm fine." She looked back down at the ground and continued walking. And as cars started streaming into the parking lot at that point, I noticed that the ferry was now making its way back across the river. She was waiting at the dock for it, and I walked home to La La Land. I have thought about her for years, and I've always wondered, how did she get on that boat? How did she get on that crazy commuter train with all those people and get to work and try and do her job, all the time thinking, yeah, this is normal, this is okay, or also thinking, how am I going to get home tonight? Does she even want to go home tonight? Who's on the other side of that door? And are there kids? I thought about him too. You know, what in his life had brought him to that point that he could treat somebody in that way? And I thought about my own actions, all the woulda, coulda, shoulda, that I could have done something differently. What more could I have done? Any good storyteller will tell you that when you tell a story, a really well-told story, you want to have a beginning and a middle and an end. And that the end should circle back around to where you started, that you should tie up all the loose ends, kind of like a gift. You should even tie it up with a bow, like, even if the bow is messy or ugly. The problem with my story and so many others is there is no ending yet. So I can only hope and wish that anyone who is experiencing any kind of domestic violence, who's hearing these stories, will find the courage within themselves to reach out, you know, for organizations like this, and that there are people there who care about you, and so that you can get to a safe place and reclaim yourself. Because I want you to remember that your story does not define you. Your story informs us.
Thank you so much for being here with us tonight and for taking the time to honor the stories shared by survivors of domestic violence. We hope that you are motivated to say no more domestic violence in our community. No more children, neighbors, family members, or co-workers abused. Further, we invite you to join us in envisioning a world without domestic violence. Each of us can do just one thing. It could be sharing your experience tonight with others. It could be encouraging your local school district to have programs that promote healthy relationships across all grade levels. As Domestic Violence Awareness Month closes, we thank you for your support during this time and throughout the year. Please continue to engage with us, including on social media. Thank you.